Welcome to the podcast of Medical Educational Resources. I'm your host, Bob Becker. Every brief episode features some of your network's associates who share personal insights, life experiences, lessons learned, and advice on optimizing not only patient satisfaction, but of equal importance, provider satisfaction as well. Everyone impacts the patient experience, from specialists to nurses, caseworkers to residents, and even housekeeping. Theodore Roosevelt said it best, "No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care." Today's episode features pulmonologist Jose Mendez sharing his approach to mitigating compassion fatigue and potential career burnout. Retired teaching general surgeon Phil Koch offers a clear and succinct example of provider empathy in action. And emergency room PA Brian McCambly discusses the critical importance of first listening to the patient and family as they're admitted into the ER. Dr. Mendez, thank you for joining us. On some night shifts in the ICU, you mentioned that it's not unusual to have many life and death conversations with patients and family members. So, over your career, what have you learned to do to help mitigate your compassion fatigue and potential career burnout?
So I take a breath, I pray, I meditate, I run. I like running. I try to do it as much as I can. Sometimes even I bring my clothes here to the hospital and my running shoes and try to get out, if I can, for an hour or two. Have a glass of wine every once in a while, and I talk to my therapist often because you got to talk through this, and you have to be comfortable with rehearsing those painful moments, not to leave them impacting you and hurting you. You have to get them out there, put them on the table, look at them and say, let's move on. So I learned that after many, many years of not doing it, and without overdoing on the wine or doing crazy things and making the wrong decisions, I realized that it's all about putting your thoughts up on the table and just examining them and getting rid of the ones that you don't need. And drinking water and exercising helps. And taking care of your own body. And I think we forget that we have to heal ourselves. Otherwise, you'll never be able to heal anybody else if you are not in a good position. So you have to heal yourself. So I learned to pay attention to me. And after what I went through, I learned to help myself a little bit.
Thank you, Doctor, for sharing your insights and advice. Dr. Koch, thank you for joining us today. Some say empathy cannot be taught. Others subscribe to the notion that maybe one can learn empathy by watching a provider exemplify it. But a question that comes up a lot is, what does empathy in action sound like? And most importantly, what does it manifest?
Here's the difference between empathy and non-empathy. You have a patient in the clinic. It's a 70-year-old lady with an ulcer on her leg. And you debride the ulcer and you wrap it in a medicated bandage. You say to the 70-year-old lady, go home and keep your foot up for a week, keep it up as much as you can, and come and see me next week. Goodbye. No empathy. Okay, how do you manifest empathy with this lady? You say to her, ma'am, what I'd like you to do is keep your leg up as much as you can over the following week. Can you do that? She says, I don't think it's going to be possible because I don't have transportation. I've got to walk from here to the bus stop. It's about 3 blocks. And then I live in a 3rd floor walk up, and I take care of my single daughter's 2 children for most of the afternoon when they come home from school. So empathy says, okay, how can I help you with that? Can I get the visiting nurse? Can I get you to help with some transportation back and forth? Can I have someone come in the homemaker come in the home? There's plenty of social services. So empathy means not only knowing what this woman is going to be going through, because you didn't know it initially, you found it out, but doing something about it.
Thank you, Dr. Koch, for that simple but very telling explanation of empathy in action. And lastly, on today's episode, when people first are admitted into the emergency room, what's of critical first importance? ERPA Brian McCambly shares his advice on first listening to the person, and if accompanied, to the family members. He says you'll learn more from them than from anyone else.
And I always say that about the patients that come here. They're angry, they're mad. And I feel strongly that, a lot of these people, that's who they happen to be in life. And maybe they're acutely ill or sick and have a traumatic injury and it's just magnified. But I do agree. I feel you don't just flip the switch on and off. That's unfortunately who you are. We have to realize that nobody wants to be in the emergency department. So we know people don't choose to show up there for the most part. So with that, obviously comes a whole host of issues. But I think it's all about communication. I mean, it may take us 2 hours to come see you. I'm sorry you had to wait. That kind of stuff helps to break the ice. And I think that most people realize that, we're not having lunch, right? I'm seeing somebody else who probably is sicker than you are. And if you were in that situation, we'd be seeing you sooner. But it all comes down to communication. I will say it again and again, because when that breaks, it's over. And that's, where we hear a lot of the negative comments about, I had to go to the emergency department, it was such a horrible experience. When you look at the actual underneath portion of it, the complaint is rooted in, they didn't hear me, they didn't respect me, they didn't listen to me. Those are the pieces that I think are key. I'm not fortunate to follow somebody for 10 years as your primary care doctor. These folks don't know you from a hole in the wall. So when they come in, you have to immediately be able to establish that in order to carry out the care plan that you're setting out to do. But it's about respect and mutual respect there. So, I hear you, you hear me, we come together and make a plan and kind of push forward there. And if plan A doesn't work, it's okay, we go to plan B. And if plan B doesn't work, we go to plan C. But you have to be open, and everybody is different, and what we think is the easiest case in the world to somebody may not be, and lots of social stressors and social issues get compounded, especially in the ED, where you have no idea what's going on in that person's life in front of you, and we a lot of times don't dive into that, but as part of our job, I think we owe it to the patients to dive into that. If I prescribe for you $1,000 medication without insurance, that's a problem, right? And so I need to understand that, a financial hardship could make or break what I'm recommending for you. So I think those are all of the pieces that you can break if you can open that communication pathway early.
Thank you, Brian. And thanks to all of our guests today for sharing their experience, wisdom, and their advice on navigating and sustaining healthy careers, and for maximizing patient satisfaction. Join us again for episode 2 entitled, If I Only Knew Then What I Now Know, and Now I Can Share.